We've all had showers, and most of you have also had a shower fight. You know the replay of the arguments that you've had, but this time they include great comebacks that you came up with while you were exfoliating. We towel off confident with our new one-liners, promising ourselves that we won't let anyone cross our boundaries in the future. My next guest is a licensed professional counselor, host of the podcast Struggle Care, and author. Her recent book, Who Deserves Your Love? How to Create Boundaries to Start, Strengthen, or End Any Relationship, she wrote in honor of the lifelong process of how to balance self-accountability with having standards for the behavior of others. Today, we're going to explore some relationship myths and boundary nightmares as we ask the question, who does deserve your love? This is the Curious Introvert podcast with me, Meredith. Around here, we explore taboo questions and societal blind spots. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to inspire curiosity by exploring the nuance and paradox of our world. Please help me welcome the woman helping us say what's true, the fiercely practical and fellow birder, Casey Davis. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
And I'm so glad to have a fellow birder on the show. I love that you shared that in your book. And it was a great little anecdote about your relationship with your husband. You have a lot of those in the book, which really help bring it home because these are kind of like high level concepts. But I love that also in the book, you say that boundaries are not quippy one-liners because I think we all follow a couple of Instagram accounts that have boundaries as those quippy one-liners. But if we don't need an arsenal of one-liner responses that are ready for boundary deployment, how do we prepare instead? What's in place of all that?
Yeah, I like to call it like the girl bossification of boundaries, where we're just going to have, like you said, this quippy one-liner to say when someone sort of quote unquote crosses our boundaries, or when someone is disrespectful, or when somebody's overstepping, being inappropriate. And I think that that's problematic for a couple of reasons. One is that it really relies on this myth that boundaries is about forcing people to change their behavior. And that, like, if you could just be boundaried enough, then it would make everyone around you treat you with respect. And that's just not the case. Like, in any circumstance, the most boundary thing you can do is to, like, vocally push back on someone. And sometimes that is what being boundaried looks like, but not all the time. Like, what do you do, for example, if your mom is always commenting on your weight and you read that little Instagram about, you should say, if you won't do this, I just won't have conversations with you anymore, or we're not going to have a relationship if you don't da 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 da. And you employ that. And your mom does not listen, and she continues to do that. And so now you're like, okay, now I guess I have to stop talking to my mom. But your mom is who provides you childcare while you work. And you can't afford to do that. Does that mean you can't have boundaries? Are we really sort of setting up these circumstances where I'm being asked to discipline fully grown adults with consequences and boundaries? And so what I think is a better way of thinking about boundaries is, instead of thinking about setting a boundary with someone, instead think of a boundary as just an internal understanding of where your responsibility ends and another person's responsibility begins. It's an understanding of kind of that psychic line in the sand, not necessarily a line in the sand that's going to be an ultimatum or something big that you do.
So you talk about internal boundaries in the book. What does that look like as far as like a process for those like type A listeners that are like, Casey, I need 7 easy steps to internal boundaries, right? But like, what's a first good step to kind of prepare when you're exfoliating in the shower and you're having these like fake fights in your head? How can you switch that narrative so instead of running through all your quippy one-liners, you're instead exploring these internal boundaries?
So I think it really starts with thinking about, in any given situation, like, what are my responsibilities in this situation? And what is this other person's responsibility? And one good example is, like, let's say that you're sitting around at Thanksgiving and, you have a family member that says something that's inappropriate. And maybe everyone kind of looks around and they're exchanging sort of like glances like, oh, this is really awkward now. And first of all, you're feeling embarrassed at that moment. You're feeling awkward. You're feeling the tension. And so the question becomes, whose embarrassment is that? Who does that belong to? Who has done the embarrassing thing at the table? Who has made it awkward? Well, that person that made the racist comment or the inappropriate comment, that's who has made it awkward. But what often happens is that we feel that awkwardness, we feel that embarrassment, and we decide that that's going to be our responsibility to manage. It's going to be our responsibility to diffuse. It's going to be our responsibility to sort of like harmonize everyone together. Maybe you look at, grandpa down the table who looks like they're about to get angry about this comment that was made, and you go, okay, it's my responsibility to diffuse this. And so you either, okay, I'm going to change the subject, or you go, ha, 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 Uncle Leroy, you're so funny. Yeah. Or you go, hey, Dad, let me ask you about the basketball game today. And you sort of take that on. You decide this is my responsibility to diffuse this, to make sure that nobody feels uncomfortable, to make sure that two people don't start arguing, to make sure that Uncle Rick doesn't get even more inappropriate. And in that situation, if we kind of stop and go, okay, who is it that did the embarrassing thing? Uncle Rick or whoever, right? Okay. So this awkwardness is not my responsibility to manage. Now, that doesn't mean that you might not decide to harmonize or smooth things over or de-escalate. But it's about the motive behind it. It's about why are you doing it? Because there's a really big difference between I have to smooth things over between everyone at this table because I can't tolerate the feeling of awkwardness, or because I feel as though my self-esteem is contingent on everyone here thinking that I'm nice and peaceable, or because I'm uncomfortable expressing anger, or because I need everyone to like me, or because I can't handle grandpa's expression of anger if he gets angry about this inappropriate comment, right? Like, see how you're taking on everybody's feelings, everybody's things, but it's actually about you trying to manage your own emotional regulation by taking control of the whole situation. That's not being boundaried. Now, being boundaried would go, it's not my responsibility to manage this. And so sometimes it might be the case that you go, Uncle Leroy, that was racist. What is your problem? And you could hear a pin drop and it gets even more awkward, right? And that's okay, because maybe in that scenario, you made the choice that my responsibility in this moment is to speak up when people in my family say racist things. That's my responsibility. It's not my responsibility to manage the awkwardness at the table or to manage grandpa's response or Uncle Leroy's racism. It's my responsibility to stand up. So I'm going to do that. Now, there are other responsibilities at play. Let's say that you have small children at the table and you decide part of my responsibility also is to protect my children. And maybe you know that one or two people involved have a history of escalating. And you make the choice that you are going to de-escalate that situation. And maybe that does look like going, ha, that's weird, and moving on. Or maybe that does mean going, Dad, tell me about the whatevers. Or maybe it means you already worked out a hand signal with your husband and he goes, Uncle Leroy, join me in the kitchen for a second, right? And that's kind of my point. Boundaries doesn't always mean that you stand up and do this girl boss. That's unacceptable, right? Because there's other kind of competing, right? Maybe your mom with dementia's at the table and you're going, I really don't want my mom to take this on. But again, it's not about what you do. It's about what responsibilities are you tending to. So there might be times when you let something roll off your back, when you kind of try to de-escalate the situation to be helpful in the situation. But those are different than I'm taking this all on because I need to smooth things over, because I'm feeling fear, because I'm feeling anxiety, because I can't tolerate other people's behaviors, because I think this is my responsibility. So all that to say, it starts with awareness. What am I feeling? Who does that belong to? What are my responsibilities in this moment?
God damn, Casey, we've been recording for 10 minutes and you've already dropped a huge Oh, this is so freaking good. Okay, so I promised some MythBusters. So this actually kind of leads to the first like true or false statement that I want to present for you to either like confirm or bust. True or false, in every argument, there is a winner and a loser.
I would say false. And obviously, there's some nuances here, right? Like, there's a really big difference between people that are in a generally equitable relationship, meaning that there's no real big, huge power imbalances. In general, those two people care about each other and want good for each other. In general, those people are able to control hurtful or harmful behavior. Not that we're perfect, not that we, maybe one person has more baggage than the other, but in general, it's an equitable relationship. Then I would say, like, there is no winner or loser. Like, we shouldn't be looking at it as you versus me. We should be looking at it as us versus this issue in the relationship. That being said, not everyone is capable of accepting your invitation to be on the same side. So if you have someone who is mistreating you, who is being abusive, who is incapable of de-escalating themselves or incapable of having any insight into their behavior, they're not going to be taking your invitations to go, let's ally and be on the same side and really look at this as they can't do that. And so even in that case, it's not like there's a winner or a loser, but there's going to be a very different way of approaching that kind of conflict.
So, is this related to what you talked about in the book, it being the vulnerability cycle? Because there's this, you know, thing related to the idea of boundaries is like, oh, me and my partner or me and my child, we have the same arguments over and over and over again. And so there's this attraction to the idea that you're going to draw a real firm line in the sand to say, if you do this, then I will do this. And that's going to, like you pointed out earlier, somehow behavior modify when really it doesn't always work that way. So is the vulnerability cycle like, is it connected to that or is it a separate thing? Have I got it wrong?
No, it's connected to that. There's not like these static issues that just belong to you or just belong to someone else. It's more that there is this kind of third dynamic that gets created between two people. And a good way to think of this is like if you've ever been with maybe a partner and there's just like a real big issue. Maybe the issue is you are angry all the time. Or maybe the issue is, you don't ever want to have sex. And that's the big, argument. Or maybe the issue is like you can't open up to them and that's the big argument. And then you break up and you end up with someone else. And all of a sudden, you don't have that issue anymore. The sex is fine. You don't feel yourself getting angry a lot. You feel safe to open up to them. And you go, maybe this wasn't like an immutable problem with me, which again, isn't to say that you didn't have a part in the conflict, because that was your anger spiking all over the place. It was your, whatever the case may be, like it was. But all of a sudden, in different circumstances, you find like, oh, I'm not struggling with those things anymore in this relationship. Because you realize that while, yes, those are your issues, they were really being activated and aroused and triggered by that other person's issues. But on the flip side, we sometimes find the opposite. We think, I wouldn't be so angry if they wouldn't be so unreasonable. I would be open to more intimacy if they wouldn't do XYZ. And then we get into a new relationship and those problems are still there. And then we get into another relationship and those problems are still there. And another, and another, and another, and another. And at some point we start to go, I'm the main denominator. I'm the common denominator here, right? And most of the time, our issues are kind of in between, right? They don't completely disappear with a new person, but they're better with these people. They're harder with these people. Or maybe there's some that just continue. And so the idea is that we all have these vulnerabilities, these sensitivities. And this isn't my concept. This is something we talk about in marriage counseling a lot. That, for example, let's say that I grew up with a dad that was really angry all the time. And so I have a sensitivity to expressions of anger. And when I feel those, I engage in some defense mechanisms. Maybe I become withdrawn and I pull away. And so if I'm with someone who maybe they grew up with a family where they felt really, really ignored. And so they kind of feel activated by being ignored. Like it makes them tell themselves a lot of stories about themselves and about other people. And so, they feel ignored and they start to go, she doesn't care about me. I'm worthless. Their defensive response to that is to get loud and angry because in the past, that's what they had to do to get attention. Okay, now I have a partner that's loud and angry, and that starts to activate my sensitivities around anger, and I feel unsafe. And this is the key, whether or not it was an appropriate expression of anger or not. Maybe sometimes it's an inappropriate expression of anger, and anyone would have felt really scared, but oftentimes even appropriate expressions of anger, I feel frightened, I close down, I don't want to talk anymore, and I pull away emotionally. Well, now I've pulled away emotionally, which is going to further exacerbate that sensitivity in my partner about being left, being abandoned, being ignored. So they get even louder. The louder they get, the more closed off I become. And the more closed off I become, the louder they get. And so we have this vulnerability cycle where we're constantly triggering each other's sensitivities and reacting in these defense mechanisms that might have worked well for us when we were children, but are now sort of trapping us in these cycles. And it takes both of us working together to go, okay, what do I need to feel safe in this relationship? And how can we come up with ways to make each other feel safe in this relationship while we also work on behaviors that are not appropriate, right? That me giving you the silent treatment for 3 days is not appropriate. I need to work on that. But at the same time, I might need to have 30 minutes of a break. And that is appropriate. Now, it'll probably still stress you out, but then that's where I can learn how to say or do something to help with the reassurance for you, and vice versa. Sometimes you're throwing things, and that's never appropriate. So you need to work on that. But even when you're just expressing anger, I still might want to pull back. And so you can learn ways to reassure me in those moments so that I can be helped, emotionally regulate in that and not engage in the behaviors that I know are inappropriate. And it kind of works that way. And that's what I was saying, when you can ally with someone imperfectly and go, how can we work through this together?
Sounds like a regular partnership.
Yeah.
When you break it down, it's like, oh, wow, that really is an equal, like, you and I both come from a church background. Like, that's like an equally yoked relationship. You are
Yeah.
equally yoked to each other. Your betterment is my betterment. And together we have an equally invested interest in lifting each other up. So, again, beautifully said. I think we're ready for our first listener boundary disaster question. So here goes. This is about his stepfather. He says, my stepfather constantly sends me links to articles or YouTube videos with evidence that God is real, telling me that I need to accept salvation while I still have a chance. I've asked repeatedly for him to respect my boundary of not wanting to hear about how I'm going to hell just because I don't believe the same way he does. If it continues, I might have to cut off communication with him, which would make me really sad, but it has to stop. What should I do?
So that's a great example for a couple of reasons. One is we do think, like, I've asked this person not to send this to me and I've set a boundary, and now they're still sending it, so they've crossed this boundary. And I want to stop thinking of it in that way because, again, that's what traps us into, oh God, now what do I do? It's not working. It's not working, right? Because that's not a boundary. You didn't set a boundary with that person. You just made a request. That was just a request. Please don't send me things like this. I think it was a reasonable request, but the reasonableness of a request doesn't force unreasonable people to adhere to it. Right? Just like the unreasonableness of a request doesn't magically become binding because you called it a boundary. So your mom saying you need to call me every day when you're an adult, she goes, that's my boundary. It's like, well, too bad, right?
It's not a magical word.
Yeah. So you've made this request. And here's the thing. Sometimes making a request is being boundaried, because what if previous to that you weren't saying anything because you were like, oh, I don't want to upset him. But again, what is your responsibility in this relationship? Well, it sounds like someone you care about. someone you're related to. And it sounds like it's a relationship where you do have a responsibility to be honest. And so you've taken the first step in being boundaried, which is, hey, I want to share with you how your behavior affects me. And I want to make a request because I think our relationship would be better if you were to honor this request. Now, your stepfather doesn't agree with you. He does not think the relationship would be better if he were to do that. He has declined the request. Now you have to decide, okay, so first of all, can I live with this behavior, right? Like, is it annoying? What are the other sort of nuances of this relationship? Is this someone that I rely on for support? Is this what would be the effect if I did stop speaking to this stepfather? Is he still married to my mother? What would that do for holidays? Do we have grandkids in the mix? What are all my responsibilities and preferences? And get them out on paper, right? The reality is we can't change what he's doing. And we are going to engage in a fruitless endeavor if what this becomes is brainstorming what you could do that would force him to stop, right? Because again, he's kind of being unreasonable. So who knows, right? So instead, you have to decide what you want to do. And again, getting to a place where you say, what's my responsibility, what's not, is going to help you make the decision that's right for you. Because maybe it is the right decision to say, hey, you've looked at it on paper and you've gone the level of distress this causes me, it's eroding my well-being. I don't think it's tenable to continue this relationship like this. I've looked at the impact that not, continuing this relationship is going to have, and that's something I'm willing to live with, and my life will be better because of it. I hope he changes his behavior because I'd, of course, rather have a relationship with him. But the only two livable scenarios for me are that I have a relationship in which he does not do this, or I do not have a relationship with him. Those are the only two livable scenarios for me. It is not a livable scenario to have a relationship while he continues to do this. If that's the case, that tells you that you are at the place to say, hey, there's an ultimatum here. But if that's not the case, if you go, well, it's not the case that it's not livable for me. Now, that doesn't mean you have to, right? But that's some good information for you. Is it just annoying? Or is it truly kind of eroding some important parts of your well-being? And only you know that. It depends on what kind of support you have, what your trauma history is, what the sensitivities, all that kind of stuff. So as long as you're kind of picking through that and you're going, oh, but my mom will be mad. Oh, but well, that's not my responsibility to manage my mom's anger, right? Because if my mom is mad, it's not me that has done something wrong. It is her husband, right? He is the one not being respectful. He is the one not listening and not being considerate. So she can be mad at him. And if she's not, it's not my responsibility to manage that. And then you decide, so just kind of a range of responses that might be boundaried. You might decide, okay, I'm not going to end the relationship or make some big ultimatum, but every time he sends it, I'm going to say, just a reminder, I do not read these. Right? Maybe that's
sort of
simple.
I like the idea of an autoresponder on his email. An out of the office response, but just for his stepdad. To me, that I chuckle because that's kind of funny.
Yeah. But it could be as simple as, hey, when you send these kinds of things, I'm not going to respond to them anymore. And then you just don't. You don't have to block them completely, right? But you just say, I'm not, and then you just don't, and you just ignore it completely. And maybe that makes him stop, maybe it doesn't. But the point is not to make him stop. The point is for you to find a livable way to continue this relationship if that's what you want to do. But it doesn't have to be a permanent decision. Maybe you do that for 6 months and you go, oof, not only has it not stopped, but it's not livable. It's gotten worse. Now I can't have any conversation, right? Great. Then you can re-look at it. Or maybe it's as simple as saying, you know what? It's worth it to me to just go, thanks for the information. I know you care about me. And just leave it at that every time.
Oh, yeah. That's a sweet response. I'm wondering, is it ever helpful for people to kind of reframe the way they see the people who are committing the offense? Because I'm thinking about, I got a few that were just like this. So I just had to pick one. But apparently my listeners have a lot of religious trauma. And one of them's family is actually in a cult, which makes that extra interesting. And, I kind of think about her sometimes when I am looking at other people's behavior, and I think like, wow, that sucks. They're in a cult. And
Yeah.
then like it allows a higher level of compassion, but I'm not related to them. So I understand, it's sticky when that person gave birth to you, or they are, in this example, your stepfather. Like, I'll confess to you, Casey, that sometimes when people are just really absurdly annoying, I pretend that they have a mental disability. Like, I have this whole story I play in my mind. Because if you think about it, we have narratives that we play all the time. Sort of automatically. We're driving to work, we're late, and the asshole next to us, we decide he's an asshole because
Yeah.
he did X or Y on the highway. And so we make up this whole narrative about how he's some like jerk who, is a trust fund baby. And so why not make up a story about like, oh my God,
His wife's in labor in the passenger seat.
yeah, or
Right.
his mom dropped him on his head when he was a baby. I mean, I won't lie. Like the part of me that's like Southern and like a little bless your heart, it does
Yeah.
come out. But it
Yeah.
can be helpful because then I'm not an asshole back to this person who may just be
You're so
in
right.
a vulnerability cycle.
You hit the nail on the head because the point of the vulnerability cycle is to examine the stories that you tell yourself. Because when my husband gets angry and the story I tell myself is A, I'm in danger, B, he hates me, he's going to leave, he's on the precipice of seeing that I'm worthless, I need to close down right now to protect myself. I am as much reacting to the story that I'm telling myself as I am his literal behavior. And vice versa. He has a story about me, maybe that I'm a cold-hearted bitch because I close down and I don't care about his feelings and da-da-da, when that's not what's happening at all. And we can make so much progress by just changing the stories that we tell ourselves, right? And that can help us with the emotional regulation. So the next time he gets angry, I hear that story, right? He's going to see that and I go, no, stop. I know that what's really going on with his sensitivities. I know where this comes from. This is not about me. I'm not in danger. He does love me. And maybe he's learned some things to help communicate that in the moment so that I feel more secure. So we challenge these stories that we tell ourselves about people. And it's a great example about the road rage thing, actually, because there are so many circumstances where we flip that story, right? And so I'll never forget, like, my friend who every time somebody would cut her off, she'd be like, oh God, I hope he gets where he's going safely. There must be an emergency. And it's like, if you got that story wrong, it wouldn't matter, right? Like, it wouldn't matter. It doesn't affect your life. Now, I will say, when it comes to really serious, harmful, hurtful behavior, we have to be careful about the story we tell ourselves because sometimes we can make the opposite mistake. We can go, well, he's really trying. He can't help it. He was dropped on his head as a baby. And we use that, and that story might be true. And if it makes you have compassion, great. But then are you using that to justify that you're not allowed to stand up for yourself? Like, you're not allowed, you have to take the behavior, right? So we want to be careful. Compassionate stories do not justify harmful behavior. But yeah, like, and that's why I say it's nuanced, because only you know, and maybe you need to change the story, right? But like, there's a difference between someone who is shoving religion down your throat because they are a really intensely selfish, self-absorbed person who looks mainly to religion to feel self-righteous and back up a lot of their hateful ideology, and they're preaching at you. Like, that person, maybe you do decide to go the route of FYI, like, I don't read these when you send them. I will never read them. This is not a conversation I'm interested in having with you. And maybe that person, you get to the cutoff point way quicker. That's different than you going, you know what? My stepdad is just like a deep down rooted Baptist old boy. And he truly is frightened for my soul. And I do not agree with what he thinks, and it's offensive to me. But I think that he thinks he's doing the right thing, the loving thing, when he, kind of lectures me or sends me these links. Like, those two people you want to deal with a little bit differently. Maybe that person is better to kind of de-escalate it by going, thanks for sending this. I know you did it because you love me. I'll consider it. Thank you, Steve. I'll consider that. And just always, thank you, Steve. I'll consider that. Thank you, Steve. I'll consider that. Right? Just like, that's kind of
Thank you, Steve. Yeah.
And to your point, that's also different than my mom is in a religious cult.
Yeah.
And I want to maintain a relationship with her so that if she ever gets to the point she wants to leave this cult, she believes that I'm safe. So I will never say, stop doing this.
Oh,
I will
yeah.
always say, thank you, Mom. I know you care about me and I care about you. I will always sort of engage in those things and say, okay, I'll think about that. I don't agree, but I respect your, like, that's different because I'm the only person that she has a relationship with outside of this cult, right? And here's the thing. It's not my responsibility to save my mom from a cult. And so that means that there is a level of harm that my mom could do to me that I would decide I'm going to have to back away. I might be her only link to the outside, but it's not actually my responsibility to save her. If I can, I want to be that person. I want to maintain that. But I also have responsibility to keep myself safe or to keep my children safe. So if it gets to the point where their behavior is causing me a level of harm that I cannot maintain my well-being, I have to go, listen, I want to be there for you. I want to be that person. But at the end of the day, my responsibility to my well-being is going to override my desire to be your safe person. And when we feel that conflict of like, should I just take it so that I can be that safe person? Well, I have a responsibility. Well, who would I be if I didn't? It's like, that's not fair, an adult.
Hey there. I love that you're loving this topic so far. If you're into curious conversations like this, you'll want to hit the follow button on your podcast player. This will make sure you never miss out on the good stuff. You're the best. Okay, back to the show. This next one is a hard shift, I'll confess. We're moving from religion to something completely different, from family to friends. So this person says, I recently found out a friend of mine is a registered sex offender. I read the court documents and learned that while he was a cop, he and another cop friend had sex with the same 16-year-old. The friend and I also exchanged business with each other along with being present at social gatherings. His girlfriend also has 2 young children, and I don't think she knows. She is also in a messy custody battle with her soon-to-be ex. Do I stay friends with him? Do I let her know?
This is an excellent question, and it feels complicated, but let me give you the list of decision tree questions that this would go down. So in the middle of my book is this thing called the decision tree. And the idea is, we talk about the vulnerability cycle first because we do kind of want to ally us against a problem. But sometimes that's not appropriate. Like in this situation, you're not going to ally with this guy against the problem. Or they're unwilling to ally with you or for whatever reason. So we move to this decision tree where we go, okay, the first question is, why does this bother you? And there are 3 options. 1, it bothers me because it hurts me directly. 2, it does not hurt me directly, but it bothers me in principle. Number 3, it does not bother me really, but everyone says it should bother me. And so I'm wondering if I'm not seeing something correctly and I need to do something, right? So this is a great example of that second one of it's bothering me in principle. So because this is something that we're against in principle, we're going to go right to our value questions, right? Is it against my value to remain in this relationship with this person? And my values, and I recommend people adopt at least the first 4 or 5 of them. Number 1 is the care and safety of my physical safety, the care of my psychological safety, not comfort, but things like I don't deserve to be like maliciously tormented or harassed or intimidated or made to feel frightened. The care and safety of my minor children and other minor children. And the other one is interesting. It's to not be complicit in crimes without my consent. So this would be like, my husband's filing tax fraud jointly, or my roommate deals drugs out of our apartment. So in those, I'm going to look at those.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say immediately, oh, it is against my values to stay in this relationship. Because 1, we have the care and protection of minor children involved. And my responsibility towards the care and protection of minor children is what was going to take precedence right now in order for me to live by my values. Now, you could see if this was my sister is smoking weed and I disagree with that and I need to know whether to keep being her friend, like being in a relationship with her, even though I think that that's the devil's lettuce. You would look at that and go, oh, well, it doesn't actually go against my values to stay in a relationship with my sister. And in that case, they would move on to go, would it be against my values to leave my relationship with my sister? And they might decide, it's my sister, probably, to dump her over something like this. But let's go back to this question. So we're going, okay, minors are involved. This is my value. So I would say that that's where I would land on that. Maybe there is an extenuating circumstance where this man has been open about this and has gone through a long journey of, I used to be this way and then I got help and I am no longer that man. And he's always been very transparent about it and nothing has ever happened since then. Like maybe that is the case, but it doesn't sound like that's the case if she had to figure it out, right? And so in that situation, you're going, okay. And then she's going, okay, do I reach out and tell my friend? And again, there's going to be some nuances there, particularly around like, who is this guy and his penchant for violence and things like that. But probably, if I'm answering this question, I'm going that my responsibility to the care of minor children is going to usurp almost every other thing there. Unless I was truly in a situation where it was like my minor children are on the chopping block or something, or, I need to like escape, whatever. So that is how I would land on that if I was using my decision tree, and it would make it really clear cut.
I really liked the decision tree, and I love how each of these processes come back to what your values are, because although it's more difficult to start off with than to say, oh, I have a hard no. If you ever cheated on somebody, which is my next true or false, by the way, then I can't ever be with you. Like that is, I won't say it's a cognitive cop-out, but it's like, I don't know. It's just easier. But what's cool about this process of discovering your values, actually writing them down, like I love how you just listed yours like that, although you did write a book. So,
yeah.
And I imagine there were a few edits. So you've really had an opportunity to dive deep and to anchor those suckers for yourself. But those future decisions require less of a mental lift because you calibrate what your values are. And I think that's such a beautiful opportunity.
And let me say one other really important thing is that now that I know that I've done it by my decisions, I know I'm acting in my integrity, what people's reaction to that is much easier to navigate. Because I don't have to own it. I don't take it on. I don't have to go, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have done it because now they're angry. I go in knowing I did not do this in order to manage reactions. And the reactions are not mine to manage because I know that I'm doing what I believe is right.
Yes, I love that. So the next true or false kind of plays to the idea of past offenses predicting future behavior. True or false, once a cheater, always a cheater.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to have to say false. But that's just obvious. Like, not everybody cheats in every relationship. Now, I'm not saying that you personally have to be comfortable with that kind of past. It is okay for you to say to yourself, I have such an intense sensitivity around issues A, B, or C that I know going in to a new relationship, that is not something I want in a partner. And when you go in it that way, it's not about you proclaiming that person is good or bad or redeemable or not redeemable, that they deserve love or not. It is just about you saying, I know myself. And the truth is like, I don't have a responsibility to date someone who has that past. I don't have to. And so if I don't want to, I don't have to, right? And so that's okay. Like, it's okay for me to say, I think that you are worthy of love if you have an anger problem, but I just won't date people that have anger problems because I know my sensitivities. A, I don't want to have to work that hard to overcome that. And B, I may not be able to ever fully overcome that sensitivity. And so I want a man who's gentle. And maybe my gentle man has a flaw that you personally could never tolerate, but I can, right? It's not about who's better or worse. And in that way, the title of the book, Who Deserves Your Love, is a little bit of a misnomer because I basically come to the conclusion in the book that you're asking the wrong question. And that's how we get caught up, is that we feel like we're making this moral judgment on someone. But when you're deciding whether to be with someone or not, it's not about a moral judgment on them. It's all about you.
Here's a big one that we hear sometimes. True or false, Hurt people, so you need to be healed before you're in a relationship.
So the first half of that's true, hurt people, but you don't have to be healed before you're in a relationship. First of all, there's no such thing as 100% healed, right? Everyone's a little bit broken. And when we talk about like loving yourself before you can love someone else, there's some truth in that. The truth is, if the only way that I can feel like I'm not unworthy of love is when I am getting love from a person, that's going to put me in a lot of compromising situations. Because how hard is it going to be for me to say, this relationship isn't right for me, and to pull away if the consequence of that is I'm going to feel unlovable because I can't be. What's going to be the fallout if I can't feel lovable unless I'm being loved? And that means I never stand up for myself in a relationship, or I never express what I really feel in a relationship. And therefore, nobody ever wants to be in a relationship with me because I'm just kind of like boring Barbie. And maybe I'm so hot that people like it at first, but then they get bored and they break up with me. And do you see how it's almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy? And so that would be a scenario where we'd say there are some wounds that you won't be able to fix by getting loved by someone else. Like you really got to do some self-work there. That being said, it is a myth that just because you struggle with your self-esteem, you don't deserve a relationship, or that you can't be loving and learn to accept love in a relationship. There's no need to say, oh, I can't be in a relationship with you, to a person who has shown up and gone, what I would love to be love and be loved by you, and you would like to love and be loved by them. Like, do it. Like, there's so much healing that can happen in a relationship. It's more about if you feel yourself compulsively unable to be alone. That's kind of what we're talking about when we say, like, a relationship is not like the panacea for all of your insecurities.
Right, right. As we close, I have one more scenario that I want to run by you, and it's about children, and it's about screen time, because that is a hot topic. So this person says, my daughter is almost 2, and we have a no screen time rule, but her grandmother, who watches her during the day, uses the iPad as occasional entertainment, even though we've asked her multiple times not to. We can see this through our Nest Cam. She argues that they are educational cartoons. This is not the only parental point of conflict, however. Nutrition and discipline style are always an argument. I feel like I shouldn't have to explain every single parenting decision to her. She should just respect what I've decided without question. How do I get her to respect my well-researched parental decisions?
You can't.
Okay.
You can't. You've already tried, and she doesn't want to. She doesn't agree with you. She doesn't think that that's important. You have a disagreement with her. Now, do I think you're being reasonable? I think. But I'm asterisk, right? Like, I think it's okay for grandmas and grandpas to have a slightly different parenting style. Maybe you are being overbearing. Maybe you are kind of over-prescribing because you're feeling anxious, because you feel like you have to control every little interaction that your kid is having. So look at that, right? Like, is it your responsibility to manage every single interaction your child has with someone else? No, it's not. Now, yes, it is your responsibility to do what's best for your kid. So like, there are some things for me that would be like big no-goes, right? Like, they have an unsecured firearm in the house. They're showing my child things that are giving them nightmares. They're sitting my kid in front of the TV for 8 hours a day, all day long. But even that one would depend on what are the other circumstances. If that's my only form of childcare, I mean, what am I going to do? She's not going to do it. That is what she is going to do all day. She does not agree with me. So my choice is, again, is this a livable situation? Because if your only choices are my mom watches my kid and this is how she watches it, or my mom does not watch my kid at all. Like, if those are the only two livable choices, if truly my mom watching my kid like this is not livable, then you know your answer. But even that's going to be constrained with, can you afford other childcare? Because you have the right to say, this doesn't work for me, Mom, I'm going to hire a nanny. You can do that. But if you don't want to, or you can't afford it, then like, you're looking at some real constraints. And then you really do have to look at, like, are there things my mom is doing to my kid that are going to irreparably damage, right? Because my values are about the care and protection of my child. They are not about managing every interaction she has, right? So, are we talking about my mom is not supervising correctly? My mom is not locking up her meds or her guns correctly. My mom is letting people come over that I have not screened. Or are we talking about my mom refuses to follow baby-led weaning and is giving her pouches, right?
Yeah.
That's different. And so there is no right or wrong here, but you need to stop putting effort into making your mom change. She's not going to. She doesn't want to. Put the effort in somewhere else, figuring out if this is livable for you. Maybe even saying, okay, my mom's not going to change, and I'd rather my kid not watch any TV, but it's going to happen. So maybe the best I can do in the situation is to say, Mom, if she's going to watch something, here's what I'd like for you to put on for her. See what you can control, not what you are trying to change about her.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting how much about boundaries is really our demons aggravating each other, like your demons aggravating my demons. And there is this pressure, I think, in part because of internet speak, that if you back away or you find some sort of reasonable middle ground, like what you've just suggested about, let's find something we can agree to when screen time feels like the next step in what you're going to do with my child during the day while you watch them. Like, because of this internet talk, it's like we feel there's a judgment on ourselves that we're
I'm
like weak. Yeah. And,
I don't have any self-respect.
Exactly. But it's like, I think that's another issue a little bit, is how much of our lives, our internal lives, we live through the filter of putting it online. I think people who have a habit of sharing everything online, like they actually live their non-online life through the filter of it being online, if that makes any sense. And it's probably not very helpful, but your book is very helpful. And so as we close, I want to thank you for writing it and encourage everyone to pick up a copy, because it's not just about romantic relationships. It's not just about in-laws and parents. Like, it covers the gambit of it, and it has resources that you would probably go back and reference in the future. Plus, there's a chapter called Why Jonah Hill is a Dick and Other Thoughts on Boundaries. I mean, for that... For that,
it's my
reason
favorite
alone.
review, by the way. The person that knocked off a whole star on their review because I called Jonah Hill a dick.
I mean, there's a pretty good case in here for that. So tell people where they can find this and where they can follow you.
So you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, bookshop.org. You can get it at a lot of independent bookstores. You can pretty much get it anywhere books are sold. It's probably also at your library. You can follow me on TikTok at Domestic Blisters. I also have a website called strugglecare.com where you can go and kind of see everything else. You can figure out my other handles. You can download some resources. You can watch my TED Talk. That's all there.
Thank you, Casey. This has been a delight.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Since you've made it this far, you're officially invited to my private Facebook group. In there, you can easily give me direct feedback on episodes, weigh in on future topics, and participate in giveaways. Search MFR Curious Insiders on Facebook or click the link in the show notes. If you liked this episode, you'll also like the other one I did with Casey Davis, asking if self-improvement is just a rat race. That's episode 219. And stay tuned next week for a remastered favorite with a sobriety coach as we discuss how friendships change in early sobriety. Until then, keep it curious.